Is there an intersection that gives you credibility about what it means? That's like understanding gravity. I'm not going to ask somebody that has no understanding, they're 5 years old and they have no understanding about what is gravity. I've got a theoretical viewpoint for my education. I have an experiential viewpoint from how I've experienced it. It's triangulated again with individuals like yourself and just the people that are in my orbit that have told me. And that gives me a perspective. And I mean, I'm 67 years old, so I don't hold things tightly. I'm open for it to be wrong. And in some cases, I hope it's wrong. But I'm clear. Where did I get that from? That's critical thinking. Who told me this? Now, I told my grandson this. You know my grandson tells me? Najee? You asked what I asked Najee, well, where did you get a concept from? You know what he tells me? Oh, I always knew it. And I'm thinking, really? He always knew it. So he just doesn't, he's not to the point where he's self-aware that all information like that is given to him orally, his parent, the culture. I mean, he just doesn't have that level of sophistication. But he did get it from somewhere. I'm suggesting that when I try to talk to anybody about it, it's clear to me, how did I get to that conclusion? And not just say, well, Jerry says. You know, no, I mean, if you're listening to something that just I said, I would be cautious and I would be very apprehensive about that because, you know, I'm prone to make mistakes as being human. I'm just prone to just embellish it or miss out on certain informations. I mean, I'm flawed in that respect. So don't go by what Jerry said. Well, why did Jerry say it this way? Why does he believe it to be this way, etc., and so forth? So some of the concepts, especially when it comes to love, now we talk about love all the time, and it is my assertion, not to say that it's the truth, as you said, Andre, is that as a culture, we have no idea about what love is about. It's a noun. It's something that we go get. It's a consumable product. Why do I say that? Well, I mean, I can list a certain amount of people, but what makes me know it is how I see it being operationalized in my own experience. Supports all the theories and all the books and it's the same thing. Now, we were talking earlier about whose voice is not included in this conversation. And I would assert in mainstream media, of course, we've gotten more clarity around that in this millennium that we find ourselves in, that women, indigenous people, Black people in general, a whole cohort of information has been left out. And we're making assumptions about our own so-called reality based on a way of being, a perspective that's given to us by a very definitive group of people, notably in Western culture, white people. And I'm not saying that that is wrong. I'm saying that we should be bright enough to know that that's not all that's here. And that if we want to learn something.
Can I cut you off? I want
Yes.
to make sure I give people context. We've been online for about 6 minutes. I want to give
people context. Hello, everybody.
So essentially, me and my father here were having this debate, or probably not a debate, but more of a discussion about the thought process that goes behind the collective ego. And so the reason, let me just give, because you don't even know this, Dad, so I'm just going to give everybody, including you, a background of why I decided this would be a good topic to talk about. So you made this statement when I talked to you last week, and you mentioned, and I'm a history person, so I'm really submerged in the history, and I don't know if it's a DNA thing or what, but I just really love history, particularly U.S. history, because there's all these types of things that are attached to our history, like our racial backgrounds, and we all come from all these different areas, and it's just so dense, and I just love it. So you brought up this situation last week about Pearl Harbor, or not? I'm sorry, not Pearl Harbor, but the 2 atomic bombs that we dropped on Japan. And so in the past, I've really been proud of the fact that we did that. Like, I was like, hey, I'm glad those Japanese, they were flying. For those of you guys that are not in the history, the Japanese at the end part of the war, they were saying essentially, we're either going to win this war or die. So they were essentially taking their planes and they were flying them into our aircraft carriers, and it was kamikaze missions, you know. And so it's to them, they either die or win the war. And so we realizing this was like, oh man, these people are serious. Like, we're not willing to die like that. So what we did, knowing that an invasion of Japan would be very costly in American lives, decided to drop 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, and Nagasaki, I think it was, the 2 Japanese cities. We completely obliterated both those cities. And after doing that, Japan said, oh, okay, well, we're not messing with these people no more, and they surrendered right after that. And so you brought up the fact that we did that, thinking that, oh yeah, we're doing some really grand thing, and like we're saving all these lives and all this other stuff. And then you brought it up, it was like, well, that was a very egotistical thing to do. Because essentially what we did was we killed 1 million or so of their people to save 1 million or so of our people, thinking that it was the right thing to do in our mindset, not putting ourselves in the shoes of all of the people and the consequences of essentially destroying all those people to end that war. So that really struck me because, like I said, I've always been so proud that we did that to end World War II, at least from the United States perspective. But now, after you brought that up, I was like, well, man, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. So that's why I thought that this would be a good topic to talk about, as far as the collective ego and how, yes, there are individual egos that are out there that, if we're not aware of, runs our lives, but essentially there's a collective ego out there. And just like you said, and I'll let you speak on this as well, Dr. Bowie, but essentially the collective ego is more dangerous than the individual ego, because you have all these people operating in the best interest of a group of people, which essentially is a war starter for a lot of different people. So go ahead. You want to go ahead and
remind us the main purpose, or what is the implications of the ego as it relates to love?
So I'll remind you, because I know this answer.
Okay, I know you know. So just remind our audience.
Okay,
what does the ego do?
So essentially, the ego operates based off of fear. And essentially, your ego cannot love. It can only judge. And what's the second thing? I don't remember the second thing that you said.
Blame,
and be right.
And crave to be right.
Yes. So that's what the ego does.
Okay. So can we take that concept, not like it's the truth, but can we take that concept and put it up against our reaction in World War II? Does it fit?
I mean, to me, it does. I mean, I'll tell you how.
Help us see how egocentric that action was. Help us see that.
Well, essentially, I mean, and I'll need to think about this further, but off the top of my head, essentially what we were saying to the Japanese is that our cause and our war and what we were doing to be involved in this world was right. We are right. We are correct. And you, as the starters of Pearl Harbor and all of the stuff that you did, and this is the blame side. This is the blame side, right? I mean, you guys bombed our ships. We didn't do nothing to y'all. You bombed our ships. You did all this stuff. You brought us into this war. And so, essentially, you need to pay for that. And so,
that's right. That's right.
Pay for that. We're gonna develop the most destructive weapon ever known to man to at least bring you down to your knees, so we can save essentially our people from having to invade you. Because that was the other option. The other option is that, well, we're just gonna invade Japan. We're done here in Europe.
Or we could say we're gonna love these people. But that's a different conversation. That's a much more advanced conversation, and certainly we don't have the maturity to even have that conversation. Okay, so let me give you another example of that, of this whole thing. And it's my belief, if war always begats war. I didn't invent it. That's what Sorokin says. If you're going to be at war, just understand it's not going to be a love context, and that's okay. But just understand it's fear-based, so you can know what you're doing. So let me give you another example. I'm working on my PhD in this classroom, and in this classroom,
talking about in the past, right? You should already have your PhD.
Yeah, this is in the past. Okay. This is like 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Okay. I'm working on this PhD. I'm in this classroom and we're talking about this topic, okay? And I bring up this topic that we so-called think we've won the war in Iraq, the first one, with the Bush, and the second one was even more insidious. But we're talking about the first Bush war in Iraq. Okay.
1990.
Yeah, something like that. Okay. And so we're saying that we won that war, and it cost us maybe 2,500, 3,000 American lives all together to get that done. Okay. And so we put a premium on an American life. And at the same time, the World Health Organization said in Iraq, 600,000 people were killed. Okay, so who won? Okay, so I bring this up to the class as, look, I'm not saying that I want 2,000-3,000 American lives to be lost, but at the same time, as I grieve for those lives, I grieve for the 600,000 Iraqi lives as well, because those were miracles too, in my mind. And we think, oh, they were just ants. They were criminals, whatever. And maybe they were. I'm not saying that they were. But having a mindset, a love mindset, it's a developmental thing. And this is, we were talking about this collective adolescence, and this is what my work says, that a lot of us, we will be adolescent in terms of our behaviors until we die, because we got trapped back there and we couldn't get out of it. And it worked. We found a formula that worked for us, and we just perfected it until we died. We never grew. And so you either value life or you don't. Like, I have a so-called racket or so-called complaint about the so-called pro-lifers. Okay, I'm a pro-life person. I'm a bona fide pro-life person. And at the same time that I'm a pro-life person, I feel, for me, and I'm not saying this for everybody, it is not my business, nor do I have the competence to tell any woman on what she should do with her body. I have no business. I have no orientation to it. It'll be presumptuous on my part to even think that I know, to put legislation afoot to tell a woman on how she should deal with for life. And at the same time, by me being a pro-life, I'm pro-life everywhere. That is, I'm not for the death penalty. And it's just it's surprising to me that most people that are pro-life, but we can kill some people in prisons because they killed my mother. They killed my kids. They raped my kids, whatever. So they deserve to have a state-sponsored execution. For me, that's hypocrisy. You can't have it, but you're either pro-life or you're not. Okay, and so in my world, and I'm not saying if something would happen to some of my family members, you can bet your bippy I would want to be chained up and tortured and everything else. That's my irrational opinion about it. That's not how it should be as a society. Okay, so I want to put that out there. So let me give you a different example. This must have been 5-6 years ago. I don't even remember because so many things collide together. I'm at this conference in Philadelphia, big conference. There's 2,500 people at this conference. It's a positive psychology conference in Philadelphia. It's like a 4-day conference, and we doing all this stuff, doing all this work. During this conference, I'm a certified introvert. I mean, I'm not going to be one that will be shaking everybody's hand and smoozing everybody. I kind of sit in the corner and like to kind of watch people. So I'm going into this conference room, and everybody's got their drinks and everybody knows everybody. It seemed like I didn't know anybody at this conference, so I just kind of sat in the corner by myself with a beer. And this stunning looking, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, stunning woman comes up to me with this accent, just a beautiful accent. Says, "Are you here alone?" I said, yeah. "I want you to come join us with our friends." And I said, what? Do I even know you? I don't know you. I'm thinking. But I got up and went and met this whole delegation from Norway. Okay, so I didn't do anything. They grabbed me and brought me into their community. Now, my training is a sociologist, psychologist, anthropologist, political science, saying that's unusual. Most people want people in their group that's like them, not dislike them. So I'm in this group. There's about 10 people. And they just showered me with love. "Oh, Jerry," they want to know my name. They want to know about me. What's my favorite music? They started asking me questions, etc., and so forth. And we stayed up to about 2:00 in the morning just talking. And it was just a great, great experience and fellowship. The next day, when I came to that same lunch or the dinner that we had, he said, "Oh, Jerry, come on, he's our friend. Come on, sit at our table." And I felt good. I sat at their table. But one of the individuals got a message that at their homeland in Norway, on an island, 21 children were massacred by a terrorist, a so-called terrorist. Came in there with a machine gun and shot and killed 21 children. Now, I'm sitting there listening to them process this information, and at the workshop or at the conference, they're blasting it all over the thing. Says, "Look, we're sorry, and we have a moment of silence." And the delegation from Norway. I'm listening to these guys, so I'm thinking they're gonna want to kill this guy because that's what I wanted to do. One of the children that were killed was a niece of one of the people that I befriended. Guess what they did?
What?
They forgave them. And it was a whole session. It was a whole session on the guy was probably mentally ill. We're sad for our people. But it was a different mindset. It blew me away. Because I was mad. I was mad for that. I wanted to be to seek out revenge on their behalf. Yet they didn't want to do that. They wanted to. They were tearful. They were saddened by it. They didn't dismiss the grief and the struggle and all the stuff. But they were much better people than I was in terms of how they saw people. And I've been friends with those guys ever since. You'll see some of the postings on, these guys. I mean, they may be on this call. I know Rooney and I are pretty good friends. That's a difference in mindset. That's just a difference in mindset on a lot of fronts. So I learned from them. And in fact, before my bout with prostate cancer, our plan was to go to Norway and stay with those guys. That was our plan, my wife and I. We were going to go there. They said, yeah, we're going to just take you. Please do not go to a hotel. You're going to stay with us. Wow.
Yeah, I like the example that you use, and that's why I wanted to kind of talk about this, because that's kind of what's indirectly that's kind of been flooding my mind over the past month or two. I saw a documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see it. If you don't have an opportunity to see it, take a look at it. And I actually forgot the name of it, but essentially what it's a mini series about immigration, people who are trying to immigrate into the United States of America, in the process that they have to go through just to get into this country if they don't have any money. Now, if they have money, there is a way for them to do that. But if they don't have the appropriate funds, either from our south border or from over the Atlantic Ocean, if you don't have any money, it's very difficult for an individual to secure a legal status here in the United States of America, which then causes this flood of illegal immigrants into our country because they know that they don't have the appropriate resources to do it the legal way. And so the influx of illegal people coming in here are great, which is why we're trying to put up all the walls.
So can I ask the question?
Hold on. Let me finish my thought before you answer your question really quick. So once those illegal individuals are in here, the documentary does a good job of trying to show them trying to navigate our system in an illegal status. And at the same time, they also interview the people that we've essentially used our tax dollars to catch these individuals, to send them back to where they've come from, which essentially is ICE. All right. And so they're talking and they're saying their side of the situation about what they think about the situation, which I thought was very insightful because I've never talked to an ICE agent before. And essentially a lot of these individuals saying, well, this is my job. I'm being paid to do a job. This is my job. And therefore I am doing this job. And that kind of strikes me a little bit because those are essentially the same things that some of those Nazis were saying when they were rounding up all those Jews to take them to the extermination camps. They essentially, their excuse was that this was my job. I was just following orders. And so I think with that situation, along with what you said yesterday, or not yesterday, but last week, essentially sparked the interest of this conversation, because essentially we're having this conversation over and over again. We're having it about the mask. We're having it about the social unrest in our country. We're having it about the economic system, how that's structured. We're having all these things that are coming up that's essentially punching the collective ego. It's exposing it in ways that I've never really seen it exposed before in the present. I've seen it exposed in the past a lot, but I haven't really seen it really unfold like this in the present with all of this, what you call the trifecta. So go ahead. Now go ahead and ask your question.
Well, my question about this illegal alien.
Yeah.
Where is the hypocrisy in that? There's from my standpoint, you raised the question, Andre, that you're an historian. There is so much hypocrisy in that. And hypocrisy is met by more hypocrisy. You don't be hypocritical and think that you're the only one. You're going to put that hypocrisy out. It's going to be met with hypocrisy. So my argument is, when you got on the Mayflower and you came over here, were you an illegal alien? That's the question. I mean, I hear the comment that, well, we discovered America. I can't get my arms around it because there were people here. How can you discover something? There were already people here. I don't understand that. Okay, so there was built in from the inception hypocrisy in my mind. That how can you sit up here and tell me about illegal and you're illegal from your inception, but you stole it anyway. You say, okay, my action, I'm just gonna steal it, and then I'm gonna kidnap some other people, and I'm gonna bring, and they're gonna help me run this country. I mean, are we just gonna ignore that and just say, oh, that was just okay, there's nothing else, so we're doing something? No. Out of the abundance of your heart is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing that forever until you recognize that that wasn't a good deal. And so the compassion should be knowing how you are as an illegal immigrant, except for the so-called Negroes. They're the only not illegal. They were stolen and brought here as captives. But the indigenous people, the Indians, they were the only real people in North America, from what I can think of, unless we just decide that they're unhuman, they're not human, and that humanity came when the Mayflower came. And that's in a notion that some people might subscribe to, that this country, we saved this country from itself, that without us, this country will be backward. Nobody's have no way of knowing that. But we do know that this is an immigration country, and if I understood how I got here and my immigration status, perhaps I can be more compassionate on someone else.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think I provoked you enough today, Dr. Bowie. I'm going to just let this kind of sit there right there, because I think this is a deep topic. We talked about a lot of different things. So I'm going to let that sit there. I'm going to pose the question, same question that I put in our title out there to you individuals. Feel free to respond and to share our video. I really appreciate everybody that has tuned in. Dr. Bowie, I thank you for your insights. I think you did a wonderful job today, and look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, same here. Love you guys.
All right, we are.